Hi, everyone. My name is August, and I'm your moderator for the evening. I'm going to start by telling you a bit about tonight's panel and a $500 donation, which will be made in honor of tonight's panelists. It'll go to a nonprofit organization that you'll pick from a list of orgs nominated by the panelists. Becoming is an ongoing partnership between IGDA Seattle and Diversity Collective to highlight diverse video game industry leaders and to hear their stories. Tonight's panel is the 8th of the series, and it highlights design leaders in the video game industry. Videos of all of our previous panels are available on the IGDA Seattle YouTube channel. A little bit about your hosts tonight. IGDA Seattle is a chapter of the International Game Developers Association, a professional association and global network of game developers with the mission of empowering game developers around the world to achieve fulfilling and sustainable careers. Diversity Collective is a community within Seattle Indies with the mission of supporting diversity and inclusion for minorities in game development. We have the opportunity tonight to learn from experienced and diverse leaders in video game design who are each eager to share their story with you and answer your questions. If you post your questions to the Twitch chat anytime throughout the panel, we'll get to them at the end during the Q&A session. In addition, you have the opportunity tonight to pick one of the following organizations to receive a $500 donation in honor of the panelists. The first organization is Hope Link, and their mission to serve homeless and low-income families, children, seniors, and people with disabilities in King and Snohomish counties by providing stability and helping people gain the skills and knowledge they need to exit poverty. We also have the Lambert House, and their mission to empower lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning youth through the development of leadership, social, and life skills. Child's Play, and their mission to improve the lives of hospitalized children with toys and games. National Alliance on Mental Illness, and their mission to address unmet needs in the Seattle area mental health system through peer-led education referrals and support. And lastly, Able Gamers, and their mission to create opportunities that enable play to combat social isolation, foster inclusive communities, and improve the quality of life for people with disabilities. So look for the link in the Twitch chat to vote on which of these organizations you want to receive the donation. And the donation is sponsored by the Seattle Indies and Premac Rogers. Thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today. Thank you to the IGDA for rehosting tonight's event. And thank you to our ASL interpreters for helping to make our panel more accessible. I hope that you'll find tonight's panel both educational and encouraging as you pursue your own careers. And with that, we're going to introduce our panelists. I'll go in order of how I see you on my screen. So if you can introduce yourself, what you currently do in games, and what your first role in the game industry was, that would be great. So first on my screen is Annie. You're muted.
Hi, I'm Annie VanderMeer, and I was just muted just now. I'm a senior game designer at ArenaNet. I've been in the game industry for 17 years, and my very first job in the game industry was ostensibly a business writer, but I became a sort of jack of all trades, and I don't think I actually really even had a title. I just wandered into any department that didn't have a locked door and asked how I did what they did.
Lindsay.
I am Lindsay Murdock. I am game director on an unannounced R&D project at Riot Games. I recently joined them earlier this year. Before that, I was at ArenaNet for 15 years, serving the Guild Wars community in various design and design leadership positions. I did get my start there. My first paid game industry job was as a content designer at ArenaNet.
Cool. Claude?
Hi, yeah, I'm Claude. I'm a principal gameplay designer at Firewalk Studios. I'm also the character lead, and we're actually a new startup that's working on an unannounced multiplayer IP. It's going to be a while, but keep an eye out. And my first role was a design and programming intern at this company in New York called First Playable Productions. It was amazing. I was very lucky, and it set off a wonderful career. So yeah, I've been a designer for about a little over 10 years now.
Kelsey?
Kelsey Pickenpaw, she, her. I am the UX director for State of Decay 3 over at Undead Labs right now. And my very first job was game artist at an online casino company. So, you know, we all got to start somewhere.
And last but not least, Jayce.
Hi, Yeah, I'm Jace Diaz. I'm a senior level designer at ZeniMax Online. Before that, I got my start at 343 Industries back in 2011 on Halo 4 as an encounter and mission designer. Yeah, every day I'm always like, man, I've really lucked out. Like, how did I get this amazing career? But yeah, a decade later, here I am.
Well, that's good. It's kind of a good transition, a good place for us to start. There's a question that I'd like to ask all of our becoming panels because I find that within the different specialties, the answer can vary pretty greatly. And that is, I want to know what role college or additional coursework played in your career, and if you think it was necessary for you for getting into the industry. And anyone is welcome to jump in.
I can start, I guess. For me, I would say back when I went to school, I went for game art and design, and it was in the 2000s, which was still very early in that regard. So a lot of schools were like, we want to jump in, but maybe didn't quite understand what they were doing, and it was sort of the Wild West. And from my experience, what I actually learned was it more or less pointed me in the right direction rather than gave me the skills to get a job. Like by the end of it, I had a degree, which on resume, sure, that's something people might look at, might not look at, but it definitely got me to meet and talk to people who are like-minded like me. It got me to look at tools that maybe I would have passingly considered looking at, but like kind of gave me a little bit more of a just a direction of like, okay, here's the skills that you have, here's what you actually need, and then like, here's where you should go. Again, it was early in its infancy, so like I imagine now the schools are a little bit more streamlined of what they do and don't teach you. But yeah, that's kind of how I got my start there.
I just thought I'd jump in because I think I had something of a similar experience where I've got a bachelor's of fine art and game art and design, which sounds really cool, but the college also went bankrupt and closed. So it's, was it necessary? No, I don't think so. I mean, honestly, if I were to like do it over again, so as a user experience designer, I think the thing I probably would have done is looked at some of the academic programs at like Washington University and some of that kind of stuff, or University of Washington, excuse me. Not originally from Washington, originally from Nebraska. I always flip it. But they've got some things with like human-centered design and all that kind of stuff, which I probably would have gotten a whole lot out of. However, I went to school thinking that I was going to be a concept or a character artist, learned that I was terrible at both of those things, but did find the thing that I was good at and was interested in, which is that like user interface is totally a thing that you can get a job in games doing. So graphic design, information architecture, all that stuff that I actually really liked and happened to be pretty good at, discovered it through that. I had no idea that was a career path until I went there. But yeah, I think these days you can find most good stuff online and everything. I learned everything that I know for my job, like from working. I didn't really learn anything or, specific about user experience in school. A lot of it was on the job, trying stuff, working with user researchers and just kind of, hanging on tight.
Yeah, definitely a +1 to the go thinking you're going to do one thing. I was like, I'm going to be an animator. And then it turns out, no, I'm not even close.
Too real. Yeah. Yeah, I think I could jump in because that especially kind of resonated with me of like, not knowing your true path for a little while. And for me, I went to Rochester Institute of Technology, so again, upstate New York, and I went for a game development program that was primarily programming, but they did sort of teach us to be more, T-shaped, sort of, like poking into all the different fields and disciplines, and it gave us perspective. Even though the program was mostly focused on programming, we got perspective on like 3D modeling and animation and all that, and so it was really helpful to kind of, learn how all the pieces fit. And I thought I was gonna be a programmer. I even thought I was gonna be like a graphics programmer because I was really into that stuff. Turns out I'm not that good at math, but I was good enough to get an internship doing a little bit of a mix between programming and design. And that was my first sort of opportunity to even understand what design was, really. Yeah, I think it was pretty nebulous in my head, and I always kind of figured like just putting the game together was most of what I would be focused on. But doing that and learning from a small team, especially how much the design isn't everything we do. I think I just kind of connected the dots a little bit more and saw the big picture, and like really found myself just falling in love with collaborating with people and doing, coming out of the weeds a little bit and just thinking about the whole. And so that left me, kind of understanding that I wanted to stick in design, and I kind of went that way and mostly learn on the job. But yeah, I think like to answer the question, I think like school felt like it was necessary for me. I don't think it's necessary for everybody. For me, it was like a place I learned how to learn, and I became more disciplined in that practice. I think I needed that place in my life, but I've worked with so many different people, coming from so many different life places that, that's just not the fit for everybody. And like so many people have said already, like you learn so much on the job that it's hard to say like you need to go to school to get the same education, but whatever helps you sort of prime yourself to grow, I think is the best tool for the job.
I think my just hearing everybody, I think my college experience is a little anomalous when compared to everybody else. I went to a small liberal arts college, Macalester College, and I got an English degree with a specialty in creative writing, which was not a thing that helped me get any job. And it was something that is sort of sold as like, ooh, people, be all impressed about where you went to school, not in the game industry. But it was the early 2000s. So it was like, I didn't have, I was a kid from Mesa, Arizona. I didn't know anything about how games got made. I was lucky enough to, after the fact, like get pinged by one of my professors to put together like a theoretical group of classes that could be like a game design focus or a game development focus. So I think that for college, I feel like it's like, one, everything is grist for the mill, as I say, like everything helps you be a better designer. Like you learn a lesson from everything, and that's a good attitude to have no matter what. Your mileage may vary on that. One thing I've heard from people who aren't in specialist colleges, or even who are, I think that is like, one, they're worried like, oh, I didn't start specializing fast enough, like I'm going to be so far behind. But what I've heard a whole lot is that, and what I always try to counsel people to not do, is like, don't lock yourself into a specialization like too early, because our interests change, like tech changes. You may think you really, really love something, but then you find something else you love more, or you just stay a weird hybridized person like I am with narrative and design and writing. But yeah, I think that it can be valuable, but I think that no matter what, if you commit yourself to the sort of practice of learning consistently, not going, okay, and now I'm done. That's the key thing.
I might be the only one here who doesn't have a college degree. I am a college dropout. I was a fine arts major at a community college and basically realized I would never make any money. And I was never going to do anything in Rhode Island, and I needed to get out of everything, the whole situation, and just packed up my stuff, mailed a bunch of it to a friend of mine in Washington State who was customer service at Wizards of the Coast, and moved out here to try to get a job in customer service. And from there, I was able to network here and meet dev teams. And that's how I got my opportunity. And I really learned everything that I know about doing this job on the job, and from some really stellar mentors that I've had throughout my career. That's really where all my education came from. And I don't really think that anything that I learned in college has been relevant for me at all. So on the job education. Yeah.
This is why I love asking this question, because you all have so many different answers and there's so many different routes to how you can get into design or how you can get into games. And Annie, you were talking about like writing and narrative influencing your design work as well, and that like any interest that you have can influence your design. So I'm curious to hear if you have other areas of study or interest that are wouldn't be considered game design, but that like influence the work that you do as a designer.
Definitely. I this always makes me go, oh, I wish I'd taken X course, like art. Definitely. I was way into, I actually thought I was going to be an artist when I was much younger. and I wish I'd learned more about like 3D modeling, but it's stuck around with things like some design and whatnot. I'd sort of accepted when I first got in the industry, like, well, I like art, but it's never going to be a thing that I can get engaged in, and that's okay. But then I worked on Neverwinter Nights 2, and they're like, well, we have this armor creation system, and somebody needs to take these art assets and make armor. You get to do it. Like, oh, cool. So I started working on that, and I thought, okay, well, this was fun, but this is never going to happen again. And then I get to ArenaNet, and they're like, well, we need a bunch of composites for Guild Wars 2. There's so many people in this game. And so it happened again. So never, if there's something that you enjoy doing, it will get folded in at some point, like maybe through magical coincidence, maybe on purpose, but it'll happen. Like, keep focusing on it. So TLDR, art.
Cool. So I'm curious, like, for when you just started out as a junior in the industry, how you, where you found your like initial learning and like initial growth, and like, was mentorship something that played into your career growth early on? And is that something that you're interested in now as somebody in a senior and leadership position in mentoring juniors coming into the industry?
I can jump in on that one. Yeah, like mentorship basically started my career in a good way. Like, I was in college and, you know, learning all these different things about what's possible with games and what I could do, and just so many different directions. Nothing feels like it's 100% clear what the right way to go is. And I don't remember how I totally stumbled on this website, but basically there was like at the time, you know, this is in the late 2000s. There was this place called MentorNet, and I just signed up just like on a whim. I was like, whatever, I'll just try. It was free. Just like they're supposed to basically couple you with other mentors. And I got coupled with someone who worked in games for a while at Midway. And he was super responsive every time I reached out with questions and stuff. And it really just like, it felt like a place that I could ask questions that I would normally be embarrassed to ask, basically. You know, just like, what am I doing? Is this a good idea? Is this a good idea? Of like, kind of like how to put my stuff together, like what to focus on, what to work on. And he started to bring in some of his like early experience and stuff, and just kind of share with me like how that might relate to things I'm interested in. And so that back and forth, it was like a little pen pal relationship for a little bit. It just gave me so much clarity as to like my next immediate steps, and I just felt confident in doing that. And I don't think that it was like about getting the perfect steps from the mentor as much as it is about that latter part of like getting confidence in doing something instead like taking a step. And that was what led me to, you know, some early side projects that led me to knocking on some doors from internships, and that led me to my first internship, and it was just all kind of snowballed from there. And you know, he was just like cheering me on the whole way, and it felt like I had someone that excitedly I could write to. I was like, oh man, I got in or whatever. And so that was really cool. That relationship was really cool. It's like a starting point, and I've had other mentors since then who've played similar roles. But looking back and being a mentor now, it also is super valuable this way, right? Like I get to sort of use other people's sort of questions and experiences to validate my own in a bunch of ways of like, man, that is something I went through. And it sort of like gives you an opportunity to even sort of crystallize the lessons you've learned and the wisdom you have. Maybe you do give yourself credit for just by seeing someone in a similar position. And so now all of a sudden you're giving like these tools to someone that you didn't even know you had, and then now you have a new tool. And so it's really confidence building both ways. And just it's been something that I've held on to tight, and I can see all the little lessons that my mentors left with me that I just kind of keep on a little bookshelf in my head. Yeah, so it's been really valuable.
Yeah, mentorship's been huge for me. I really lucked out in my first job that like I had a manager that she just cleared the freaking runway for me to like anything that I was just like, I think I want to do UI. And she's like, great. She's like, let's figure out how we make that happen. You know, she's the one that got me into doing like wireframing and flows and like all these things that like I just didn't realize were like a part of the process. Or she's like, oh, you mean it's not just like sitting in Photoshop and making boxes? And she's like, no, it's so much more than that. And that was really awesome. And you know, she was also somebody that kind of pulled back the veil a little bit for me with kind of how things work. Like I think I was very naive early on, specifically around things like pay and stuff like that. I think sometimes we don't realize like how important that sort of mentorship is as well, to just kind of be like if she had never told me that I was underpaid, I would have never known, and it just kind of like figuring out like what actually needs to be revealed in order to help somebody progress. It's not always just like, oh yeah, this course is really great, or you should go watch this GDC talk. Sometimes it is kind of those sort of things that can set you up to actually be successful, because it does take time. And if you don't know those things, if nobody ever says anything, there's a lot of kind of like, just you don't really talk about it sort of things. It's getting better now. I think people are getting a little more comfortable having those discussions, but yeah, I lucked out with her. And then I kind of went for a couple years where I really didn't have anybody. Like Claude, I think it's great that you found that resource. Like, I think I wish I would have been a little more proactive. I think I was just too shy. And for a long time, they're just, they're just, and there were no other women or folks within like the queer identifying community or anything like that, that like I saw doing what I wanted to do, that I could look up to or felt like I could reach out to. And I was too shy to just like randomly hit somebody up on Twitter. So everybody that's comfortable doing that, like, kudos, because I wasn't comfortable doing it. And so like, as I'm kind of sitting in more of a leadership role, like the thing that I think I learned from my mentors, because I lucked out and I found some later in my career, like I've got a really awesome group of ladies over at Undead Labs that just, I love them so much. And they're like awesome. And I've learned so much from them in all their different disciplines. But just being visible, doing stuff like this, honestly, like this for me is kind of part of mentorship. Like granted, like, I'm talking in a group, but like it's being open to like this kind of stuff, sharing experiences, talking through things. Somebody hits me up on LinkedIn with a DM. They're just like, hey, can I ask you about UX? I'm like, yeah, totally. Like, what do you give me what's your Zoom account? Like, what do we got to do? But yeah, it's been huge. As we've all kind of, I think a lot of us have said, like learning on the job, and like learning on the job is learning from other people. So.
I think, sorry, go ahead.
All you.
Okay. I think for me, mentorship has actually gone back all the way to when I was in high school. A million years ago in 2001, I picked up then Macromedia Flash, which eventually became Adobe Flash, which became nothing after a couple of years. But I was like, I'm going to teach myself how to animate and make games and stuff. And then I opened that program and I saw all the windows and they scared the daylight out of me, and I closed it and I didn't look at it again for like 2 months. And I was like, all right, I'm going to open it back up. And slowly started learning the tools, all that stuff, making really, really bad animations on Newgrounds that no, you can't look up. I deleted them. But eventually, at the same time, I was also doing after school programs. The city I was in was like, they were really struggling to do after school like youth programs, and it was like a low performing, low improving school, over 50% dropout rate. So I was at this school, and then there's this one guy who was there who was like a mentor, Bill, and he sort of took me under his wing, and just like he saw that I was interested in that stuff. And I mean, I was just doing it just because I thought it'd be fun, and I didn't really, there's no way I was going to be like, oh, I'm going to make a career out of doing this kind of stuff. And he really took that and sort of saw my interest and sort of nurtured a game design sort of respect out of it. And fast forward a while, I mean, that guy's great. He's actually still in my life today, in fact. But like he's sort of been one of the many people I look to as like mentors as I go about life. Fast forward to when I actually got like in the industry at 343. It's weird because like that mentor sort of, that relationship shifts a little bit, in that it can be people your age. It can be people like it went from being, this is the adult man who saw this kid and helped nurture him, to this is, a coworker who's maybe a few years older than me, but like knows scripting way more than I do. And so like I'd fall under their wing, and then I'd fall under like, you get like a good manager or somebody like that. And then some of the best advice I've gotten has been from like colleagues. Like one person was like, the best thing you can do if your position, whatever it is, if it's leadership or even not leadership, is to work so that other people's jobs are a little bit easier. And that way collaboration just like flows. And then that way, if you're stuck, they can help you. And it just becomes this really good sort of mutual process. Yeah, it's funny. Even now I'm thinking of a bunch of people in the back of my head. I was like, man, I haven't messaged this person in a little bit. I should probably message them after this. Yeah.
Annie, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, everybody has great mentors. I've kind of been without like strong mentors in gaming, and that has always been something that's bummed me out. I was very fortunate to have a fantastic mentor and advisor in college, Dr. Stephanie Burt. She's amazing. And she was also the one who post-college gave me the opportunity to like write a syllabus for the game theoretical game design course or something like that. And her support on me doing something that wasn't becoming an academic, which had been the previous plan, and like going, I'm gonna do something crazy. I'm gonna be the one person in my family that like runs off into an artistic direction. And having that support with that kind of leap of faith was amazing. It was really scary to get into games and make that major pivot, but I was lucky enough to have people who I think supported and believed in me as I was coming up in gaming. But it was actually, I did not run into a female peer in my discipline, in design specifically, pretty much until I met Linsey. And I think there was this mutual clocking when we were on this panel together of like, you are cool. I wish to work with you one day. I definitely felt that. And in working with Linz, I felt like that was a peer mentorship thing that I really enjoyed. And I wanted to have that kind of, I love being on panels, and I love just sort of the principle of like, do you want to know stuff? I know stuff that might be valuable to you. Like, let's talk about it. And I had an opportunity to first start mentoring sort of in person in a more focused, less generalized stuff way at ArenaNet. And soon enough, like my mentee, the learner became the master, and she was fantastic and showed me up, and I loved every minute of it. And I've had the opportunity since actually to get involved in, and I'm looking at it out of the screen and make sure I get it right, the IGDA Foundation Diverse Game Developers Virtual Exchange Program. I love that it exists. My mentee is a brilliant woman, and I am so excited for her to get in the industry and start like kicking ass and taking names. Like it is a phenomenal experience. And one of the things I have learned throughout my time in the industry is, I mean, what Jayce said, peers can be great mentors too. You don't have to be like, and now they're older than you, because that's becoming less of a thing I can do. But I'm eagerly looking for a peer, whoever wants to help do any mentoring for me, and also learning from mentees and getting a chance to do that, because it's fantastically fulfilling.
I know a couple of you have mentioned now like a lack of diverse mentors that look the same way you did, and a lack of peers who are just like other women designers in games. So I'm curious, like Lindsay and anyone else who wants to jump in, why you think we have that lack of representation in game design, specifically like in a leadership role, and what you're doing or what you see happening in the industry to improve D&I in the design space.
I'll jump in on that a little bit. I think specifically when it comes to design leadership, a lot of places are looking for experience. And if they're looking for someone who has experience leading games or leading a studio, or who has been in the industry for 20 years, tends to come up men. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling problem. And I think it's going to take companies looking at diverse candidates who are up and coming and being willing to take a chance on them. Every one of those men who are in studio leadership positions had somebody who took a chance on them at some point. And it's going to take companies doing that now with diverse candidates. And I feel like that's the opportunity that Riot has given me. I've been in leadership for a long time, but they saw something in me, and it takes people to do that and just like give them a shot for us to see more diverse folk in leadership roles. And you have to kind of seek it out. And it also is incumbent on folks in more middle leadership to foster diverse people in the industry. One of the things that ArenaNet does, which I think is really beautiful, is the narrative department has a mentorship program that specifically targets diverse candidates to help them get some experience working on industry stuff and working sort of in the industry, even if they're not there yet, so that they'll have that on their resume. It can be really hard to break in, and finding those places where you can get some of that experience can help a lot. But when I started out, when I was originally hired, it was me and 16 men in design. And over time, I saw more and more women coming in, and that was great. But it still was never quite equal. It never quite felt like there were just as many women as there were men, because there weren't. And in other disciplines, you can see a little bit more diversity, but I think design still tends to be fairly male dominated. And that can also be really intimidating. And I think that there's also certain specialties within design that can be even further intimidating to women coming in. That can be a little bit more of a hostile environment or argumentative environment, and not just for women, but also shy people. I've seen struggle in those environments, where it can be hard to sort of step up and against the tide of argument, and design can often be. I still remember a meeting when I was like in my first 6 months of my first design job, writing down, and I was taking like copious notes to try to like be good. And I wrote down design equals argument, because it's just so much passionate discussion that it can feel like fighting, and that can have a hostile feeling to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mentioned at the start, I got really lucky with my first internship, and one of those reasons I actually look back now is it was probably like at least half the staff was women, and I didn't even know what I was walking into. It was so rare. This was my first thing ever, and it was a very intentional effort by the CEO. She spent a lot of effort doing that. And it was in New York, and so it was like a limited even range you could even find candidates for games, and so she did an amazing job doing that, and it affected the culture in such a drastic way that I didn't realize until after I left, until I started poking at other places I've been in, and I think that when I look back at it now, like it helped me really like early on to value certain styles of leadership, certain styles of communication. Like the way the place flowed, it just felt more like empathy was sort of at the top of the sort of things that we cared about, things that we did, like the way we communicated, even just like, less interruption, less argumentative, like more just like, I don't know, something about it just felt like very together, in a way that like I learned to sort of unlearn in a way later in my career, and not because I valued it, but because I ended up seeing that so many levels of ladders above me, right? And so I think basically what that manifested as is like, as I went through the rest of my career in other different places and saw other leaders, I saw other traits, and those traits were things that were, like Lindsay said, like things that tend to be more argumentative, things that like the people who were the leaders tended to be the people who were saying the most or the loudest in the room, and that's not always how you lead, or ever even necessarily how you lead effectively, but that's what we see, right? And so it ends up being what we like value, or not value, but like sort of interpret as leadership. And I think that just requires like such a big cultural shift in the way we think about what leadership is, who leaders are, and subsequently, I think that'll just show up in different people, because those perspectives that come from being different change our values, change our behaviors. And I just basically, I look back at it now as like such a rare opportunity to see how people can shift culture so drastically, and how that can affect the way we even perceive skills and traits of people in leadership positions. It's just so important to see those people in those roles and put them there and take the risk of trying out new people in roles that we're trying to mitigate risk with by picking people who've done it a certain way before. Like just because we did it one way doesn't mean that's the way to do it, right? So I don't know. It just takes trying new things, I guess, but that's harder than it sounds, obviously, for a lot of places, a lot of cultures.
Yeah, jumping on to what Lindsay and Claude was saying is a lot of times it feels like there's a catch-22 in there where it's like, well, in order to get this leadership experience or position, you need this leadership experience, but how you need somebody to at some point take that chance. And I think our industry is very much like it or not, for good or ill, about connections in a bad way, nepotistic ones. And for many people, it's not out of a sort of sense of like, I don't know, trying to be poor, trying to be exclusive. It's more like, well, I know X is a great person for the job. That may be true. Or I've heard the sad argument way too many times of, oh, well, we put the job offer out there, but we just didn't get any diverse candidates. And it's like, why don't you do this amazing thing called trying harder? Like, they are out there, and it takes a sort of situation where there has to be outreach for it. And I think, thankfully, that I have seen, I think more and more studios are starting to, and I think this is the core of it, see the worth in diversity, in having diverse perspectives, in talent pools, in life experiences. Like, I talked about how in design, like, all life stuff is grist for the mill, and it helps that. Like, that applies to everything. And I think when you start to see studios and leadership act on that and really manifest it, you start seeing much more interesting stuff get made. And yeah, Claude, I love what you were saying about what sometimes they call soft skills, which is really insulting. About like how, like, leadership styles and whatnot. And I came up at some places that definitely like the much more aggressive kind of, I tell you what gets done and it gets done kind of leadership style. And then I was lucky enough to go to a talk in GDC 2019. I think it was, apologies for not remembering this properly, that seems like a million years ago. A director from Ubisoft's talking about how, like, a new way of leadership, which was much more listening based and much more like, you know, this is what this person is saying, but this is what they're actually telling you, and you shouldn't say this because they could interpret it as that. Like, you should trust me means I don't think you know what you're doing, and so on. And I was sitting there listening to this, like, this is crap that I have been told for ages. If I wanted to be a leader, I should not do, or I should like tamp down. And I think there's an evolving understanding of what it means to be a leader and leadership techniques that I think is critical to everything in our industry. And diversity being a key part of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jayce. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, it's starting to change, but for most of my career, I haven't worked with people who look like me. And it's funny too, because I'm also, you can't see it in the camera, but I'm only like 5'4" as well. So like usually, it's me, this like short round dude, and then like a bunch of really tall, really lanky white guys with hair. I also don't have hair. And it's funny because I'm always like the weird odd shape out compared to everyone else. And then, and then you get into like Hispanic, and then, and I think going back to the original question of like why you don't see that, and it's actually something Lindsay touched on as well. You'll see a thing that's like, we want leadership. I think it was Lindsay. We want leadership, but you need to have leadership skills, but we're not going to hire you to give you those leadership skills. And but that actually, I would actually extend that all the way to entry level. I've seen too many entry level positions posted on websites where it's like entry level, associate, level designer skills, must have shipped 2 AAA games. I'm like, what are you, like, what? There's so many awesome people out there who will make things on their own, just put it out there. Like they learned Unreal and then they made a map, or they made this or that or whatever, and they just put it out there, and they don't get counted as any sort of like knowledge or something that's trainable or something you could lift up. I think that stems from I don't know, studios just, again, it's changing. it's starting to turn, but I see a lot of just fear, I guess, from the corporate level of like getting new blood in. New blood means diverse blood. Because old blood, honestly, the 90s and early 2000s were almost entirely white men. It was just that, and then dealing with the problems of the past, they're the ones who got the opportunities and promotions while their colleagues didn't. Like, and it could stem from anything. It could stem from skin color, the way they talk, an accent, orientation, anything. And so, like, as we become more progressive and as an industry, or try to, all those things from the past are still, like, those echoes are still there. It still matters. That's why you'll see, like, oh, new indie team startup, and it's a bunch of like middle-aged white men all standing there, and maybe one woman if you're lucky. And like, that's just it's sort of the effect of that, and it's changing. But that's why it's like, well, why isn't there mid to high level leadership of color or anything other than just a white man? And it's because, well, our past was we still have to deal with that. We're learning, but that's still an effect.
Yeah, and I think, I'm sure we've all made that joke of how incestuous the game industry is, right? Like, somebody leaves and you're like, cool, see you in like 3 years at another studio. It's almost like a circle. It's a very, it's a lot of people hiring their friends and things like that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't want to work with your friends or anything, but like, kind of to what people were kind of saying, like, I think one of the like biggest realizations I ever had to make, especially as somebody in a leadership position, is when I'm not actually a minority anymore. Like, as a white woman at a game studio, less and less am I becoming, like, less and less am I actually a minority anymore. Or like, I see more like me at my studio that I'm at now than I ever have before. And there was a certain point where, we had a lot of initiatives around diversity, and it's like, diversity is not just gender, and making sure that we were being more forward about that sort of thing. And I think one of the best things that we ever started doing personally, so as a UX designer, I work a lot with our UI team and stuff. We looked outside of the industry. We hired people with web dev experience, because that's front end. That's exactly what I need. And, we tried to find people that, enjoyed games and things like that, but it was not a requirement to have game industry experience in order to come and work on our UI team anymore. And I think that was like one of the best things we ever did, because I think it started to open doors for other parts of there were other engineering parts of our team that had been doing that too. Like, we weren't the first to do it, but just the fact that Undead was like, all right, you know what? Like, you need experience, you need like the relevant experience, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in games. And I've just seen a lot of people get opportunities that I don't think I've seen at other studios. And like, that's one thing that I will always give credit to Undead for, is it's just, they were willing to bring people in from different backgrounds, skill and otherwise. But yeah, it's a lot of it's also just, when you talk about like D&I initiatives, it's hiring. That's the best sort of initiative you can. Yeah, it's just like, you need to hire people. It's like, you can be involved in community stuff, but if you're not actually putting people in seats, are you doing the work? ? So
yeah, and one thing I just wanted to toss in, like, sort of piggyback off of that, is like, I've sort of come to think of it a little bit more as like the door, and then once you're in the door, what happens, right? And I think the industry is changing to the degree of like seeing more people come through the door. It's slow for sure, but then I think we need to change what it's like once you're in there as well, in so many different ways, to just make you feel like you can actually use your voice, use your perspective, bring that to the table. Like Jay said, like, I also basically never see myself in other people I work with. Like, I've probably worked with like at most 3 other Black people, like, at a time, and any given studio that I've ever been. Like, that's it, right? And it's hard, because it not only makes you feel alone, but you feel othered, right? You feel like you're already not a fit just the second you walk in, and then you're trying your best to just be a fit, and sometimes at the expense of erasing who you are to just do that, right? Like, you're kind of like quieting yourself, like, you don't want to be disruptive. But the challenge is that, like, to bring your actual value of your perspective, your unique perspective, it is inherently disruptive, and that just feels hard to do when you're already feeling othered. Like, you just want to fit in, you want to like belong, and like, you don't want to be the person who says the thing that like makes everybody like question what's going on, or what they've always done, or how it's like, just what they're even making, right? And that just hurts, and so you're like constantly holding yourself back. And I think the thing that ends up doing that's connected to this question of leadership is Like you're not as confident necessarily, you're not speaking up. And that's what gets sort of looked at as those traits of good leadership. And so, it's easier to get passed over that way. And it's all sort of connected, right? Like we're holding ourselves back in some ways. And that's really hard to overcome. It's like a lifelong experience, like trying to accept yourself in a place where you feel othered. So it's definitely, it's like imposter syndrome plus in a lot of ways. like you just have more and more layers of it. So I think that those are all connected to why we see less in leadership as well.
For anyone who's watching, who has gotten through these hurdles, who finds themselves in a leadership position in design for the first time, what advice would you have for them for finding success in that space?
I would say lead by empathy and an example, but like overall, really consider how your stances and your actions affect the people around you. The easiest example I can give for that is when you're in a studio or have come from studios where the culture is more like everyone works late, everyone crunches, everyone does that kind of stuff. If the lead is working super late, it's kind of unspoken that other people will as well. So like as a lead, it's sort of your responsibility to make sure you're checking yourself. Everyone's passionate about what they do. That's not necessarily an excuse. Like as a leader, you should put those limits. You should encourage your team to take the time they need. You should take your own PTO, because if you do not do that, I don't know how many times I've had discussions with people that are just like, oh, they're forcing me to take my PTO because I never take it. Please take it. Let your team take it, because if you're not, the people under you are not going to as well. They're going to be like, oh, no one takes it, or I feel bad for taking it, which is more common. So like that kind of stuff. Your decisions will make work for everyone, no matter what it is. Just make sure it's the right work. When it comes to hiring, try to look for more than just the job description, just the checkbox. Like look for people who you think can learn to fill that role versus who can already do the job perfectly. You'll be much more happier with the first one. Yeah,
I think one of the biggest things that I can say is that, being in a leadership role doesn't mean you have to know everything. You're not expected to be an oracle, as much as we all wish that we could be. Like if I could see the future, I wouldn't be in game dev, but it'd be great, right? Like if I could just anticipate what was coming down the line, a lot of being in a lead role, it's knowing what you know, but it's also knowing what you don't know and knowing when to reach out to others and to lean on them for their expertise. Like one of the best things you can say to somebody who asks you a question is like, I don't know. Give me the time to go. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to go talk to some people and I'm going to come back to you and we're going to talk about this again. And like being comfortable doing that, being comfortable admitting when you don't know something, but like also putting the work into like, you got to follow up on it and stuff. You can't just say like, I don't know, and then dip out, but like, but like, just, recognizing that like you're on a team. If you needed to know everything and you were going to do everything, you would be at your own studio making your own game. You're not. You're on a team with a team of people that know things that you don't know. And like, that is like the best thing. That's the thing I like about games. I love the collaboration aspect of it. I want to talk to other people. I want to learn new things from them. I'm in a leadership role. I'm learning stuff all the time. Jayce, I think you talked about this, like learning from peers and everything. Like I swear, like every day I learn something new from somebody and runs the gambit of where they sit on the team. And listening, that's the other big thing. Listening and not getting defensive. I think that's hard, especially for somebody new to leadership, to kind of prickle a little bit, like when somebody's giving you some critique, because that can be it's really hard because there's new expectations on you. You're kind of like Jayce is kind of saying, your work impacts other people, like you're making work for other people. Like it is no longer you and what you're doing today. It's what are you doing today and how is it going to cascade down to other people? And so just like when you're getting feedback from folks, it can hurt sometimes because you feel kind of bad, especially if you're an empathetic person. You're going to feel bad that you made somebody else's life harder, but like you can't get defensive. You got to be receptive to it. And then always that follow-up time, take time to process if you need to, and make sure that you really heard what somebody was telling you, but then always come back, go back to them and be like, hey, here's what I did to address what you were saying. Do you feel like that is fixing it? Like, is there something else we need to do? let other people help you grow.
One of the things that I'm sort of continually asking myself and asking my team is, what are the things that we're doing right now that are setting us up for success in the future? So how are we, sort of almost speaking to, if you're overworking yourself right now, are you going to burn out and not be able to function later on? Are you setting poor expectations by working too much, and now estimates are being hung upon your ability to work overtime, and now that's the norm, that's the expectation. So like, what are all the things that you're doing right now that are setting you up for success in the future, setting your team up for success in the future? And also I sometimes talk about the team that will come after us, because we may not always be working on this thing, and for the people who come in later to shepherd whatever it was that we built, have we set them up for success? Or are they cursing our names and just wishing we had done things differently? So I really like doing future Linsey a solid. I really like doing my future team a solid. And so I'm always asking that question. What about what we're doing now is setting us up for success?
Yeah, oh,
Go
sorry,
ahead,
go ahead.
Claude.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, just +1 to everything that's been said already. Like, I love the sort of the trend of humility in leadership. It's a really big deal. Like, it turns out it's not super inspiring for your leader to be perfect. It's kind of just makes you feel worse about yourself. But you should inspire your team to want to grow, right? And so it's helpful to show that you're also growing. One thing for myself that I've sort of picked up on, like, more recently in my leadership experience, is like sort of shifting my mindset to think about people's strengths as opportunities for better game design. Like, basically leaning into what someone brings to the table as part of the actual design of the game you're working on, the design of the feature area you're working on. Like, how do you leverage that person's specific, like, unique individual outlook, perspective, talent, interests, whatever, to bring into the game, and that will just be, whatever that is, will be better for it. So I've just learned to just trust and embrace that.
I'm curious to hear from anyone who wants to jump in. Like, if what project throughout your career, whether it's where you are now, or I guess what project or what team has been really fulfilling for you, that like when you were there, you felt like this is like made for me, whether it's the people you're working for, like the design problems you got to address in the game, and just what was it that made it such a good fit for what you wanted to do at the time?
Oh, my team right now. Oh man, I could talk for hours about how wonderful they are. And I'm on a very wonderfully diverse team, a very senior team, and very open-hearted, and vulnerable with each other, and a lot of trust. And it's every day I come to work, and it's a joy to work with these people. And even when there's problems, it's still interesting to explore together, and hear each other and hear our perspectives and come together and collaborate. I mean, collaboration is like the most important thing in game development, and I have a team that's really, really lovely about that, and so welcoming of each other, and so supportive of each other, really supportive of each other. I expressed that I was nervous today about this panel, and immediately I had my teammates who were like, give us a link so we can cheer you on, and I just find that to be the kind of environment where I can thrive, where I'm not afraid to make mistakes and say, hey, I should have done this better. That makes me a better leader when I can very openly say, I should have done this better. Here's how I'm going to change, here's what I'm going to do better for you guys. It helps me to hone in. So I think trust and support and welcoming, all those things are what makes it such a great, cozy, lovely team that I love so much.
I think for me, working on the original, I say the original because there's X packs now, and I'm working on one, Guild Wars 2, because I was on a very small team. We did this team within a team kind of thing, and I was just lucky enough to be on the personal story team. And it was such like we weren't making any of the environments in the game. We had to sort of beg, borrow, and steal for stuff. So we're all sort of like, okay, what can we reuse? Okay, what can we have? And that sort of feeling I had about like stretching out my knowledge into any place that didn't have a locked door was in full effect there. I'd come up with like a lore idea that was meant to fix like a design problem. And I'd run it past people in charge of lore, the writers, and they'd be like, yeah, okay. Like, I've noticed that we don't have a whole lot of char names, like, and they're kind of like, they're really cool. They're kind of like Roman style. Like, yeah, like I'm just gonna like make 5,000 char names. Okay, yeah, sure, go. That was fun. There's very little places that just sort of let you do that. And it was so great to work with the people on that small team. We did this kind of tandem or like pair development where I'd get like a chapter and it would be me and Lana Chappelle. And she and I were just like, we are gonna make a story. We're gonna make the coolest thing. Like we can, and we have every tool at our disposal. Like we got to get the setting right in terms of like picking the right area of the game. Like, okay, yeah, I like that divot right there. It'll be a great scene. And like doing the temp text, which ended up, because the writers were really great, and if they recognized like, oh, that's a good line, or that works very well, but just let your work stay in, which was cool. It was an opportunity to be just a game development specialist in a way that a lot of projects, either you're an indie and you have to because nobody else is going to do those things. Just kind of take some of the pizzazz out of it, or you just can't do later because you're supposed to be taking the reins of something much larger, which is great and has a different kind of satisfaction. But that kind of like that hit me right in like the sort of intermediate stage of designer development, and it let me, it just was like, okay, this is fun, have fun. And it was a lot of daily reminding why I wanted to do this and why I loved it so much. And I worked with really great people, and it's cool to be back at ArenaNet working on different stuff, seeing old stuff that I did, seeing new stuff, seeing some familiar faces, and like going, yes, it feels good to be back in this setting. I feel a connection to it that I don't with other places and settings, IPs that I've worked on before. So it's fun to be back.
Yeah, it's actually something that you touched on there that resonates with me a lot. It's those moments where you get to be more, right? You get to do more than just the what's listed as your job description. You get to, whether it's like you said, in indie, you have to, right? Like nobody else is going to do this work. You have to. When you get to AAA, it gets weirdly hyper specialized, and then like even more hyper specialized. So like when I first got in the industry, my role was level design, encounter design, scripting, like all sorts of things just sort of thrown together. And then like I've also worked jobs that were like, no, you're just placing guys on the screen. And then it's like, okay, but I kind of, you get that like itch of like, I need to do more. I want to at least experiment more. And for me in my career, the moments I look back on as like the most fond were the ones where either because everything was on fire and they're like, cool, you can do that, do it. And you know, like especially when you work in like live service, it's just a lot of like, you can do that, cool, and then you get to do it. But it's also the times where like during pre-production or something like that, where your team they're just like, all right, we're gonna try this, and if this doesn't work out for you, like if you just don't want to do this after a while, we can get you to other avenues. Like that perception from leadership to be like, look, half the time we're building an airplane while we're flying it, and it's, you know, like if we see someone either not personally being satisfied with a thing, or it's just not working out for one reason or another, or they're okay with it but they could be doing something better, encouraging and nurturing that sort of behavior or attitude with them of like, okay, cool, we'll give this a shot next sprint or next whatever. Those are the moments in my career where I'm just like, you look at the people around you, you look at like they're supportive, and I mean, I've made like lifelong friends pretty much everywhere I've worked, because they have those moments too, right? Where it's like, oh, they were doing this thing and then they got moved to another team, or they got to handle more responsibility, and it just like, I don't know, it just like lit a fire in their eyes, and they're just like, I love seeing it when other people are like that. So like it kind of resonates back on me, and I'm like, oh, I get to do it too. Yeah.
All right, so we're just about at 8 o'clock, so we're going to move into our live Twitch chat Q&A. So if you're watching and you have questions for the panel, drop it in the Twitch chat and we'll talk about it here. But to start, we got a couple of questions that came in through our Discord. The first one says, as a minority, I know I've noticed a big difference between how seriously people take me if they first see me in person versus first seeing my portfolio in online events, and feel that it's not uncommon. So what advice do you have for people who might be facing this problem in an interview process?
That's a hard one.
It is a tough one.
That's a really tough one.
Yeah, the best advice I could have in that kind of situation is one of the things that I learned sort of coming up in the industry, the like tasks, the sort of like, oh, okay, this is a difficult lesson to learn, is that sometimes interviewing in a place is not so much convincing them that you're a good fit for them, but seeing if they're a good fit for you. The whole like, you're looking for Mr. Right, not Mr. Right now kind of thing. And I get that's so hard when you want to get into the industry and or it's a hard one to stay in sometimes. It is all well and good to say stuff like that, but if you truly feel like it's a situation where they treat you markedly differently, when they've seen what you can do, that's going to be a sort of situation where it's going to be an uphill battle the whole time. And I would say they're not good enough for you.
Yeah, I mean, if they're willing to discriminate during the interview process, then what is it going to be like when you're in? Red flag.
Yeah, that's a hard lesson to learn. Like, I wish I would have figured it out sooner, because it's like, I am totally aware that I can sometimes come off as like younger as I am and stuff like that. And like, I've definitely had people do a read and it's like, yeah, you know what? What's it going to be here? You sit in that interview and you're just like, look, if you're going to talk to me like this, like before you see my portfolio, I don't think I want to work with you. And again, that's easier to say once you start having experiences than it is when it's your first job. So like, I'm not going to pretend like doesn't make that harder. It absolutely does. But like, it's not going to be worth it most of the time. If the interview feels like crap, the job's going to feel like crap. Like, just to be real blunt about it, if it doesn't feel good, it's not going to feel good later.
Yeah. I would plus one that, and I would just say, like, you don't have to make decisions about yourself after an interview goes poorly. And I think that's really, really hard when you're new and you're just trying to get in, like it's like Annie was saying. But I think it's still true. Like, you can trust that you have something of worth and keep pushing on it, and not decide that that's not true because the interview went poorly. Like, I've so many bad interviews and who knows why. But that's part of growing as well as being bad at something sometimes. So I don't know. I guess I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, you have to trust yourself anyway. And so don't let someone else's approval be the thing that defines your strengths, right? Just, you don't have to make decisions about yourself after those experiences.
I would add that persistence matters as well. Like, going to those interviews or having, even if they've seen, like you said, like making that judgment before they've actually met you. It sucks because they're in the position of power, but that is their problem, right? Like, as time goes on, you're not going to go away. You're going to keep at it. You're going to show up. You're going to eventually get hired, or you're going to do the work, and then you're going to be in a position of power at some point, hopefully. And it sucks because that's how change is usually forced, right? Like, you usually have to like get this thing through to people, but like that stigma or prejudice or whatever it is that's giving them that weird second thought when they look at someone like you, like, that is not your fault. It shouldn't be your problem. And really the best way to get through that is to just show up and don't get discouraged. It is super discouraging at times, but keep at it. Like that's the best you could do.
Yeah, it can feel like speed dating sometimes,
Mhm.
especially early on, like where you're just kind of like, all right. Like, eventually one of these will work out. And I think both Claude and Jayce have touched on the fact that it's like, just because that interview went poorly or went bad doesn't mean you're bad, or that you are bad at your job, or that you're not going to be good at this thing. You know, it's not a good fit. And sometimes it's good to find that out early rather than later. But yeah, a big agree on the persistence thing. I remember that was really tough for me early on, was getting something outside of like, once I graduated, especially when I wanted to do something that hadn't really been fully established yet, like with UI. Like I was like, I know you can get a job doing this. I know this is a thing. I know I'm good at it. Like I need to find the job. You know, I had to go work drawing Google Maps, making roundabouts in their tool for a little bit while I continued to just interview at other places. And like, you know, did I want to work in casino games? No, but the team felt good and they didn't treat me weird. And so, you know, I was like, all right, it's a start. It's something. It's going to be I could put this on my resume, and like, if I need to go to the next thing, I can point and I've got experience doing this thing. I think we've all I think it's been said before, but it's just getting in, just that initial foot in the door is always the hardest part. And it's probably where you need to be the most persistent, but once it happens, you know, it gets easier.
We had another question also around discrimination, but of age discrimination instead. And they said that one of the biggest hurdles for them working in game design is age, because of assumptions that people make regarding what they might know, or what their flexibility is, or what the expectation is for role or salary. And they're coming at it specifically asking for, because there's not a lot of representation for developers that are over 50, but I think age discrimination, like Kelsey, you were saying, can work in either direction as well, based on what assumptions people might have. So if any of you have experienced something similar to that, what advice do you have for them for how to work through it?
I don't have experience with it, but man, I share those fears. You know, I sometimes am like at night, like, oh no, one day these developers aren't going to want to listen to a grandma, and I'm never going to, you know, get another job in the industry. And I'm probably feeling it, sweating it, because I just turned 40. And so it's like, oh man, am I going to age out of my industry? What could I possibly do to not age out? It's definitely a fear I share, you know, but I haven't, thankfully, I haven't felt that discrimination yet. Yeah. Kelsey, sorry, I think I cut you off. Go for it.
No, it like struck right to, I was like, oh, I've had it. Like we're, you know, female, young, and also in a discipline that not a lot of people have a full understanding of. I think it's getting better, but like people definitely don't always know what the difference between UI and UX and stuff like that, or that it is a distinct discipline. Always adds to that fuzziness. And I've definitely had people that just assume I don't know what I'm talking about, or, you know, like, well, what have you worked on? You know, or like, are you just trying to be a content designer because you're telling me how to do my job? Like, I'm not telling you how to do your job. I'm giving you, like, you know, it's that sort of thing. The way that I get around it is I get spicy. Like, I'm just like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to be your boss. Like, we're going to figure this out, sort of thing. Like, it's like, you know, it just kind of fires me up a little bit. Like it honestly just makes me want to go like, I'll show you. you think you know it. We'll see how you feel in a year, you know, like sort of thing. So
I mentioned how I've been doing this stuff since I was younger. So like, for me, it hasn't been so bad. It's weird because this industry is so crazy with age discrimination especially when it comes to older. My husband just switched careers at 35 from IT to environment art. That was a roller coaster, because 35, like, oh, there are college kids who, you know, can, you know, they did Maya in college, so they can do these things. And he spent years doing it himself, like after full-time work in IT, coming home, learning all these things, watching tutorials, like training himself on everything current, and years of that. And he was worrying that like he would just get looked over because, oh, we can just get a younger person who's not in their 30s. And it's 30s. Like, since when did 30s become like, oh, like that's old? I mean, come on. Like it's a very, I think it's a very real problem when it comes to hiring, especially entry level. Because they just expect like, oh, entry level, we can just get some college kid to do a thing and put him on contract and burn him out that way versus like somebody who's maybe has a kids or a house or a family. Oh no. And then they're like, well, we can't trust that for an associate position for some reason. Like there's definitely a stigma. I totally agree with that.
100%. Oop, you go,
No,
Claude.
please, Annie.
I was gonna say 100% what Jace said, that I would say that's more sort of like, that's another red flag. If you see them going, well, tell us why, like in that interview, if they're telling us like they seem to have some trepidation about, you restarting something, instead of seeing that as like the benefit of your experience, if they start going like, well, I don't know about that, I almost can see that the subtext is they have had a better life. They were not treated like crap. Like, we cannot expect them to go through the stuff that we put our juniors through. That's bad. Nobody should get like churned like that. And if they have trepidation about it, again, as I said before, it's not your problem, it's theirs. That might be a reason to step out. I was gonna say, being over 40, you could do like me and dye your hair and get tattoos. Yay! I just did that for me. I think that if anybody starts really coming at me, like I don't know what I'm talking about, I think I just get real spicy, and one day I'm gonna just straight come at them with the Roy Batty monologue from Blade Runner and be like, I've seen things you wouldn't believe, and just scare them into silence and then prove what I can do.
Yeah, and then all I was going to add, like, because everything I've said is I totally agree with, and all I was going to add was basically, I think as I look specifically when I think about older folks getting discriminated against for their age, like when I think about my own growth as a developer, it coincides so much with my growth as like a human being, right? And so like when we think of progress as a developer is only on this place of like thinking about how many years of experience you have doing the thing, or like do you have the specific like sort of like functional output, like thinking about like specific jobs or specific like knowledge of games or whatever that like happen, like that stuff doesn't matter as much as the stuff that we call soft skills, like we mentioned earlier, right? Like being like someone who's more okay with who you are and like has gone through life exploring, understanding like what matters to you, what motivates you, like that stuff is actually going to move you along as a developer so much farther along, and no one can teach you that other than yourself. And so that's your superpower. That's what you're bringing to the table. And so anybody who can't see that, like, screw them. They'll see it eventually.
That's awesome. Yeah. We have one more question coming in, and then we'll look at the results from the poll that we have. If you have any last minute Twitch questions, we probably can fit a couple more in. So anyone last minute, pop them in the chat. Otherwise, we have a question that someone wants to know if a portfolio of game jam games but no formal dev education is enough to land a design role. What are recruiters looking for?
It is enough to get you in the door. And once you get into the interview process, you got to prove yourself still. So I don't know if it can like slide you straight into a job. But I think we do look, with entry level or mid-level, if we see that you've gone through a program that results in a game, and you've got some of that experience, even though you haven't had a formal job, or if you've done game jams, or if you've done modding, all of those things can demonstrate to a recruiter or to a hiring manager that you are capable of doing the job, even though you don't have experience. And so getting over that hurdle of like, I need experience in order to get experience, how, that's a way that you can, as a self-starter, find a way to get that experience without necessarily having a paid position. So I think that game jam games can do that. I think modding can do that. I think you can totally prove yourself that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Make stuff. That's the best advice. Like, make stuff. Join game jams. Join Discord channels where they talk about making stuff. Immerse yourself in that. Because
alpha test.
Yeah, alpha test if you can do it. Exactly. Because what comes up in an interview is they're going to talk to you about dev knowledge, which obviously, if you don't have experience, you don't have experience. But a game jam, if I've worked on quite a few of them, yeah, like when you're doing those and you're learning and everyone's running around, like there's this sort of cohesion that happens with everyone, and it's not unlike actual dev. Like it's very much something you can talk about at an interview. It's something that you can point to, like, oh, was this built this way? Well, at the time we had, we did this, we did, like, you'll learn a lot about stuff without even actually maybe even realizing what you've learned. But when you talk to people, it shows, like it comes out. And then on top of that, it just also shows that, like, yeah, in terms of technical tools, like you know how to use the tools. So, like, absolutely, that is a great way to get the interview, at least to land that far. Like Lindsay said, you're not gonna slide all the way in, like, oh man, this guy made like 4 game jams, let's hire him right away. Like, that's not necessarily the case, but you will get looked at more so than someone who has nothing to show, no portfolio whatsoever.
Yeah, and
Plus,
oh, sorry.
sorry,
I was gonna say, like, having those portfolio pieces is awesome. Getting feedback on them though can be really important. I've had, I've had people reach out to me, like we talked about, like the mentorship stuff earlier, excuse me, sorry, like choking on my own mouth. We talked about like having people for mentorship earlier. I think sometimes a part of that can also be like, hey, like, do you mind looking at this thing that I made and letting me know what you think about it? And like, that's so hard that takes a lot of like courage. Like, I'm not gonna, like, I totally get it. It's really hard to do that, but you would be surprised, especially if you can take the thing that you made, get feedback from somebody professional that's already kind of doing the thing that you want to do. And if you can show how you responded to that feedback, I love that. when that comes back and I can see that somebody sought out feedback and then iterated on the thing that they made, I'm like, come to me. come here. So
Kelsey, you pulled something out of my brain and just said it better than I ever could. The like, can you take critique? That's so hard, and people learn how to do that throughout their whole career. I find game jams incredibly impressive. It also is like, well, you have the initiative to go and participate in these things, and like, grain of salt, because I don't have higher firepower in my position. The thing that I would look for in that kind of situation would be if you're used to iteration, because in game jams, you got to get stuff done fast. But in a sort of situation where it's like, this is a longer project, it has different levels of iteration to it. Are you going to get bored? Are you used to doing like this kind of project? If it's an opportunity that is a little bit more focused on one discipline versus another, is that going to be something that you find less exciting or intimidating in any way? That is where I would angle my questions, but I don't think that there's any opportunity or anything like that or that would make me go, oh, absolutely, it would get you into the job immediately, but it also wouldn't keep you from it. I think that just looking at any of your experience and looking for what you're going for and going, okay, this is what I know I do well, and this is what they probably want, and here are the points where they will have questions. Like, run that through your head. And I know that probably everybody does who's going into an interview, but like, good, useful things, and not, oh my God, they'll hate me, and what if my breath smells, and none of that. Think of where deficits are, and if you can't, actively work on improving that, think of a path to it, or think of something you can do to work in that direction, or just address it head on and say, I'm looking forward to improving my skills in this. So, it's a bonus, not a downside.
So we're just about at the end of our time here. I want to go around one more time with everybody so you can let people know where they can follow you or your work online, and say something that is making you excited about games right now. Like, what keeps you jazzed to keep working in this industry? So I'll go in the order that I see you on my screen. So Annie, you're up first.
I think I'm also alphabetical. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at murderblonde. Yeah, that's pretty much the place where I run around. I founded my own company, Tiamat Collective, and tiamatcollective.com is the site. More stuff will be coming soon. I I'm working on Guild Wars 2's expansion, End of Dragons, and that's been really fantastic. I also, because I'm always hustling, doing writing and freelance narrative, I was lucky enough to help out Witchbeam with their recent project Unpacking, which I love. It's amazing. Everybody go play it, and everybody go get End of Dragons when it comes out in February.
Unpacking is awesome, I will say. Lindsay, you're up next.
Gosh, I am on Twitter at Lindsay Murdock, just my name, but I'm not super present there. I mostly like to keep up with stellar people I've worked with, and all that fun stuff. What I'm working on is unannounced, so it's not like I'm posting much these days either. And gosh, what is making me excited? I'm always just excited to see new experiences. I think that games have this incredible opportunity to bring worlds and stories to life in this interactive format. And I love storytelling. That's my joy. In life, really. I watch tons of movies and TV shows just to consume new and interesting ways of telling stories, and games are so unique in that they're truly interactive in their ability to create experiences, and even if it's a game that doesn't fundamentally have narrative and bespoke storylines or whatnot, you're creating a story in your own experience, and I think that's really beautiful. And that's why I stay in games, and that's why I can't imagine doing anything else. I want to bring worlds to life and let people immerse themselves in them.
That's awesome. Claude, you're up next.
Yeah, I'm so happy Unpacking came up already. I'm gonna go reverse because it's just on top of my mind. I was literally gonna bring it up anyway because it's like when I think about things that excite me in games and keeps me here and excites me for the future, it's a lot like what Lindsay said. It's like, games have this incredible capacity to create like storytelling and empathy through your actual agency, like your interaction with the game, and nothing else does that, right? And we have so much capacity left for that to tell different stories and to create empathy for things that are hard to actually explain, like what we just talked about with being a minority. So I get really excited when I think about stuff like that, and playing a game like Unpacking where I can like put my head in someone else's like experience that way just through interacting with things that are super relatable. It was so groundbreaking for me. Like I love that game. That's easily a game of the year for me. But yeah, I'm on Twitter. I don't post much, but I'm on there, so you can reach out and then maybe I'll say hi. And I am at Claude Jerome, just my name with the underscore in between. And I'm working on also something unannounced, but we're hiring lots at Firewalk, so take a look. I got lots of different positions and roles and stuff. So yeah, hope to see new faces.
Oh, Kelsey?
Oh yeah, so I'm on Twitter. Probably more active on it than it should be, but I'm at Spaced Cadet. That's where you can see all my nonsense. It's mostly dog pictures and garbage like that. But I think the thing that I'm most excited about, honestly, is like the accessibility movement that's been happening within games, and like it's been going on for a while, but like within the last 5 years, it's been just the ingenuity that's been kind of coming out of that has just been so cool. And I know that we've kind of talked about empathy and things like that. Like, Undead Labs, our head of player experience, Vicky, she made it happen where we did an inclusive design sprint, which meant that we had accessibility advisors come in and talk to the team. And like the empathy building that did was just really, really cool to see. And that was like almost 2 years ago, and people still talk about it and still reference it. And like it really rooted deeply in a lot of our developers, designers, engineers, audio, everybody. Like they really stuck close to a lot of folks, and that's just been really, really neat to see. I think it's just, yeah, that, and then just seeing where platform tech is going. Like this streaming's pretty cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Seeing where that stuff is going is really neat. yeah, definitely the accessibility stuff. Like maybe it's a narcissistic thing, but I want as many people to play the things that I make as possible. And like that definitely makes that happen more. So yeah, love that stuff. It's awesome.
Yes, more accessibility, definitely. Last but not least, Jayce.
Yeah. So I am most active on Twitter, Jace_face. It's actually that was when I was a kid, they'd call me Jace Face, haha, teasing you, Jace Face. And then I was like, well, joke's on you. Now people know how to pronounce my name, so I'm gonna use it. Yeah, I'm on there talking about video game stuff, voice acting stuff. I also do voice acting, so you'll hear about that stuff occasionally. ZeniMax is also hiring as well, ZeniMax Online. So go ahead and hit that up. Yeah, can't talk about what we're working on, but it's super cool stuff. And I think for me, what I'm really passionate about, which is funny because growing up, I wasn't the hugest like big social gaming guy, but especially with the pandemic and like going on Discord and talking to my friends and we're all playing things together, like that's definitely gotten me more into it and more intrigued. And as we go forward and hopefully things start, calming down and becoming more normal, and I would love to see how this has affected the social aspect of some games. Because even I mean, even something that would be considered not multiplayer can still have social aspects to it, and I think that's really interesting. And I think when you think of communities, Discord communities, Twitter communities, whatever, I think there's a lot of potential there to sort of tap into that somehow. I mean, we've seen it with crazy stuff even before pandemic with like Twitch plays Pokemon, Twitch plays Halo, Twitch, like those are really fascinating because they're not multiplayer, but they're multiplayer. And I don't know, I think there's something interesting to explore there.
Very cool. So we have the results of our poll are in, and the winner is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So we're going to be sending them a $500 donation. And thank you all for watching and for voting. And a huge thank you to our panelists for coming in and sharing your stories and your experiences with all of us. And just for being visible, for being you and being in the industry, you're appreciated. So thank you for your time.
It was fun.
Yeah. Thank everybody for watching.
Yeah.